Hello, and welcome to, or welcome back to, Erin Twibbles Around Aimlessly. I'm Erin, and my husband and I are on a debt-free journey using a Budget Mom and Dave Ramsey-inspired zero-based budget approach. Today is our weekly check-in for the third week of February, and this is a weekly practice where we go in and look at our categories for spending, saving, and expenses, as well as extra debt payment, and look and see how we did in reality versus how we planned. So let's go ahead and jump in and see how we did this third week of February in what I like to refer to as the week that Murphy unannounced his visit and moved in. Working out of my Excel template again, and if you've seen my March plan with me, I have essentially replicated the Budget Mom worksheets into an Excel template. So I haven't been filming my weekly budget plannings, but I'm still doing them. The budget, what we anticipated, those are all the numbers that are already put in there. And then we have our actual. And a couple of things that you will immediately see stand out is things such as this other category. And even if we look over at the side here, we ended up having to tap into our sinking funds. So our emergency fund, maintenance, our cushion, we had to pull everything from our birthdays and holidays, more from the maintenance, etc. for that. And that is, for the most part, all of these expenses down here. And I will explain some of those as we go along. We did have some good news in that we had anticipated a pay for my husband being $1,029, and he actually received another raise. So this was his second raise in about a 6-month time. He received that, so his total pay came to $1,204, but that did include a back pay amount as well for that, as usual. So an additional $175 from there, the usual money from our son for his car registration and his insurance, which money that came from the sinking fund. So I include our sinking funds as our income because it's money that was already there, just transferred out of that savings account. A rollover, so this was what was carried over from the previous month, or not the previous month, the previous week. And this is usually for bills that are going to be due this week that can be paid from the previous week's paycheck. It's just making it easier for me to do reconciliation. And then we had a bit of cash that came through in the cash envelopes. So we were starting off, we had anticipated starting with an income of $2,343, ended up with $3,763. So a difference of $1,420. And yes, we spent every single dime. All of our usual suspects in terms of having the weekly amount to the pool. Health insurance did not come out this week, but it is coming out now. Our weekly loan payment, our weekly mortgage payment, and our vehicle insurance, which is a good thing that we have insurance because this past week and a half was the week that everything that could go wrong with a vehicle did. My husband and I, we have 3 vehicles between us. My daily driver, we have our off-road vehicle, and then we have our backup car that's kind of used when it is raining. Our son also has his vehicle. However, his vehicle needed to go into the shop and so he was using our spare car, which is Mercedes. He went to go and take his car into the shop to get it fixed. We thought it was going to be one thing, and it ended up being a cracked manifold. And the quote that they gave him was $1,600 for that. Now, he in no way had that money. And to be honest, there is no way we were going to pay that because he has a Jeep Wrangler. We have a Jeep Wrangler. My husband can do all of the work. So we knew we were going to be able to cover that probably for around $600. And so that is where some of the charges here are. And then some of them were the week before because it had technically, we got the quote and we're ordering the parts just before. We knew, okay, that car's going to be out of commission. So there were costs that were associated with the additional parts for that. So $70, $30, etc. Then what ended up happening was the idler pulley on the Mercedes went out. Husband takes a look at it. He goes, okay, well, that's, kind of an easy fix, but it's going to be getting the parts because getting European parts for a German car can be a bit of a challenge. So cheaper, not having to go to the shop or anything, but going to take a bit longer. Well, now that left my son without a vehicle so he could get to his new job. I happened to go into hospital, so he was able to use my vehicle. And you'll see what the impact on fuel prices was with that. But then one day as my husband is heading home from work and he had to ride the motorcycle in the rain. And so car stopped suddenly in front of him. He had to hit the brakes on the bike. Back tire slid out from underneath because roads are slick with oil. When it rains, down goes the bike. So the mistress sustained quite a bit of damage that we actually had to call and file an insurance claim on. And this is where we realized that even though we had money for insurance, we didn't have any money put aside for the excess or for the gap. So that is where, because kind of everything had been being drawn out, all of the cost and parts for our son, then the cost of some of the parts for the Mercedes, and then now 500. They would only take payment by credit card, so made that on the credit card, transferred money from the emergency savings just to get that paid off right away. They'll do all of the fixing and everything on it. So now we're down to one vehicle, two people needing to drive. So our son ended up staying with his best friend, who he happens to work with, and at her place with her and her partner. That took care of transport for him, but my husband still had to take my car. And in the middle of all of that, the lawnmower gave out. Now, some people will say that, oh, a lawnmower, that's not something that has to be attended to right away. I don't know how you are or how your husbands are or how your partners are. Mine is very, very particular about the lawn. It is also the end of summer here. It is the wet season. So we are getting a lot of rain, which means you have to mow your lawn about every 2 to 3 days. Otherwise, you start getting a jungle. And we put off and put off and put off. And it was getting to a point that we've got big dogs and he was only able to see about half of them. And I'm like, okay, we're just going to use our cushion, use up the rest of it. We'll pull from here, there, and everywhere to get a new lawnmower because it just looked like crap, especially the front yard. And I don't like having bad curb appeal. So those were a lot of our unexpected. I had anticipated buying a bread machine, which is what this expense here is. And I had taken money out of the birthday/holiday. So call it a late Valentine's gift, early Mother's Day gift to me. And then starting in this 4th week of February, we just did a reset of everything. Because I was in hospital for the entire week, I had heaps of no spend days. However, my son and my husband still managed to spend, and we'll get into some of that now. So if we look at our envelopes, so groceries actually did pretty well, only $155 spent, which is good because we needed that extra 145. Started with 50 and spend, 50 was spent. That was my husband's money. Fuel, we had $80 that was in the fuel digital envelope. We spent $300 in fuel in 1 week. And that is because of the distance that was being driven with my car. So when my son was driving it, he was driving over 100 kilometers each way on the motorway. When my husband was driving it, it was about 35, 40 kilometers, but there's a lot of traffic, so it gets a lot of stop and go. This is why we have the motorcycle, and this is why we have the Mercedes, because it's a grocery getter. It doesn't use a lot of fuel. But with those out, there was really no choice in. We also then did, because of driving the vehicles, have more in transport costs. So we had $100 out of $135 in transport. Had $100 for the dogs left. Didn't use any of that. We actually took $75. We put it towards fuel, along with the $145 that was left over. Put that towards fuel, and that was to take care of that negative balance. And also, because I was in hospital, I didn't have any of my actual specialist appointments because I have like 8 different specialists for everything. If it ends with IST, I have one. So only about $15 that was spent in health. So we saved in the other areas, but just coming up with all of this money at once, that is how we went from anticipating only spending $963 to having $2,053. But the good news is we were able to cash flow all of this. I did not like having to go into the emergency fund, and I know some people might say, well, that doesn't really count as emergency, blah, blah. Well, we need our car, so for us, it is. I know some people are going to say, well, you shouldn't have fixed your son's car. You're not his emergency fund. Well, here's what it comes down to. At the end of the day, he is my son. I am going to help him out. I would rather give him the money and make the fix than him go into debt trying to find a way to get that money. I do not consider money given to a family member to be a loan. I never expect to get that money back. If he pays us back, fantastic. If he does not, I'm not going to hound him on it. It ruins families when stuff like that happens. And I want him to know that if he truly needs help, and for him, he truly needed help. He's been having a tough go. He's been unemployed for 9 months, picking up casual work here and there. We have the means to help him out, and so we did. But we also had that discussion, and we had the money for it. Now, had all of the other stuff happened and we had seen we were running out of money, we still would have been able to come up with the money. We could have pulled it from different sinking funds. So the money was there. We didn't have to stress over it. Yes, we had to have one charge to the credit card, but we paid that off right away. And you'll see that we're already putting money back into those funds that we took it from. But It also reinforced to him the importance of having that budget. And so he has already said that he wants to sit down with me. He wants me to come up with a budget for him so that things like this don't happen again. And I would rather him have that safety net for learning the first time than learning that it's okay to put himself into debt and get a credit card, because that is what he was considering, and they will give him one quite easily. He was considering that. We didn't want him to make that choice. We want him to be able to, when he decides to get a credit card, to make those decisions responsibly. That's our thinking around this. So if you want to say, oh, you're not his emergency fund, well, maybe you aren't for your kids, but I am for mine, if it's necessary and if it's actually an emergency. And that's all that there is to it. And that's the same line that I take with any family member or any friend. If I have a friend in need, I just give them the money. The trade-off was that increase in fuel. So we have blown the fuel budget. By this point in February, we have spent over $500 in fuel. I think we're actually over $600 in fuel at this point. So that's a bit of an ouch. But out of having 1,120 budgeted, we only used 695. Now, the other thing some people might go is, oh, well, you had that money here for health. I need that money. I know that I have doctor appointments coming up. I know that I'm going to have more specialist appointments coming up. I know I'm going to have different prescriptions as we try different things coming up. So no, I will not touch that one. I know how important that is. I was able to pull from the others, and we've done a reset. Money is back in. We're doing good. Thankfully, it was not a week where things were coming out of the sinking funds or going into those either. So we had $1,115 left over that didn't go into any sinking funds. That was carried over to our debt. Now, we had already planned a $215 payment to we had planned $165. So that was kind of left from that. And then I just sent my spend money because it was just kind of sitting there. So we still paid $215 in extra debt. Could we have paid more with this 1,000? Yes, but I knew we had stuff down here that we had to take care of. So after paying that 215, which keeps us on track for paying 2,100, call me stubborn, I'm going to hit that goal. Had $800 left over. So did the $45 that was planned for the February Save Challenge. Put $255 back into the emergency fund. Had $420 from the digital envelopes to carry over to the next week. So just to ensure that if Murphy has a cousin or something that decides to come in, we're not starting from scratch in that, and then a cash carryover. So $800 into the different savings, and that still kept us at a zero-based budget for the week. So we can look at our percentages down here by each category. So about 10% going to the mortgage, 8% going to debt, 32%-ish going to expenses. So not including mortgage and debt. When we include mortgage and debt, 55% was going there. Still 21% to savings. Happy with that. 18.5% to that variable spending. So those envelopes, nothing to the sinking funds, adds up to 100%. This is only 77.8% because it doesn't have, you'll see, the envelopes or the sinking funds in here. If we look at the specifics of our envelopes, 22% to groceries, 7% on spend, 22% to fuel. That's a massive chunk, plus another 14% to transportation. Technically, we can kind of include this 10% here, so it's not really to the dogs. That is going to fuel as well, because those were the accounts that we took it from, and then 2% to health. So that is how we turned out for the third week of February. Was it great? No. Could we have gotten into a really bad space and just kind of thrown hands up in the air, which tempted to do a couple times? Absolutely, but we did not. So we looked at what we had, what we needed to do, and then I got home from hospital and I gave Murphy the boot and kicked him out of my home. So we now have all the 2 cars are now up and running. Our lawn is mowed. It looks nice. I have bread baking right now, no sodium. Thank you, Crystal, for that. And it's now just a matter of getting things back here. And so people always ask, oh, well, why are you always talking about positivity? Well, 1, I'm a positive psychologist, so that's kind of what I do. And 2, you have 2 choices when you have a situation like this. You can either get into a, woe is me. And I'm not saying that I didn't get pissed off or frustrated or even maybe cry a few tears in the shower and thinking about eating carrots or something. I did. But then we went to work and we sat down and we came up with a plan and we go, how do we continue to meet our goals, but then also replenish this money? And we are very fortunate that we are in a space to do so. But these are why sinking funds are so important. And this is also why we are continuously working on those sinking funds and that emergency fund. Now, I do not ever want to have to go back in and touch that emergency fund again. But again, we were able to already start, finding the extra money. I could have put that extra money from, my husband's paycheck and put it towards a credit card, but I didn't. And this credit card is a massive goal of mine, but that wasn't the right choice. We have reset for the 4th week. If you saw my March budget with me, you will see that we've already got everything. We have a plan. We're still meeting our $2,100. So on track to get that credit card paid off as well. The charge that was put onto it has already immediately been paid off. So we'll be able to get all of that taken care of. Hopefully a takeaway from this is that, you know what, crap happens. And sometimes you just kind of put your forehead to your palm and you're just like, WTF. What else can go wrong? And you start waiting for the other shoe to drop, and you can become very pessimistic, anticipating negative outcomes, and just switch your mindset. There's always something positive. There is always going to be, even if it is something small, and find that small positive and focus on that. Our son is safe and has a drivable car. My husband is safe in that only the bike took damage, none to his body. Our other car is now safe to be driven wherever it needs to be driven. My car is safe because, well, she's my baby and nobody else is driving her, so she's kind of hanging out at home. I was still able to get the medical treatment that I needed. I was still able to be visited. So those are the positives. Did we go off track? Yes. Are we back on track? Absolutely. Keep that in mind if you have a month or a week or even a year where kind of Murphy comes to visit. It can be tackled, it can be overcome, and it can be achieved. And so that is why I always remind people to choose kindness, show gratitude, and always keep a positive mindset. So share in the comments if you had a visit from Murphy and what have you done if he came to visit to kick him out of the house and keep any of his in-laws from coming to visit as well. Looking forward to having a chat with some of you there. Otherwise, I will see you all in the next video. Bye.